call the meeting to order. I have to give you a little spiel before we start. All participants are viewing via Zoom, and I will follow the protocols that we need to. I am John Stevens. I'm the chairman, and for tonight's meeting, each member needs to identify him or herself before we vote. We will have a roll call vote for each vote. I don't think we need to. If we need to, we will. Everyone will be unmuted throughout the meeting. If we need to, we can change that. If there are visitors to the meeting, they need or have questions, they need to identify themselves and their address and in order for us to answer their questions. That Joanne Duncan will be controlling any documents that we have and sharing them, screen sharing them. And let's see if there's anything else. This is a live broadcast. It will be recorded. And well, that's it. We'll get started. We're going to we're going to go to Roberta Cameron first.
John, you have to take roll call.
Oh, I already violated my first rule. Okay. Justin.
Here.
Oops. Sandy.
Here.
Kristen.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Ken.
Here.
Jen Thomas is muted.
Here. Here.
Okay, thank you. And Brooke Paget, I don't know if he's here yet. So absent, and John Stevens here. Did I get everybody?
No, you missed me.
Jim, how did I miss you? Jim Gallagher.
Brooks,
You're not even on my little screen. There you are. You jumped over. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, thank you, Joy. There's
Brooke just came in.
Brooke, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, welcome. Okay, we are going to have Roberta Cameron talk to us about 30 minutes, more or less, about the plan that she's been working on and that we are very, very close to finishing. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Before I start talking, I just noticed I could be seeing things, but it looks to me that the number of people on the screen is not the same as the number of attendees. So I wonder if there are people who are in the waiting room, or if that's intentional, or if they're actually not there. But I just wanted to check that before I started.
There are 13 panelists, and then there are 3 attendees who are, in essence, watching the meeting, but they're not active participants. That's how we always run these webinars.
Okay, so I can't see them, that's all. So I just
correct.
Can't see
If they have questions for you, they'll send them through the Q&A.
Perfect. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood before I continued. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of give an overview of where we are and what you have and can expect to see in the next couple of days so that we can be prepared. This is my this is the last meeting before we have the public hearing. It's possible that I may come back and just give one last review in October. September is going to be the public hearing where we're going to formally present the plan and invite public comment and feedback on the plan. So before the public hearing in September, we're going to have a complete draft of the plan prepared and ready to post on the town's website and circulate to all of the various town staff and stakeholders and anyone who was involved in getting us to this point to date. So I'd like to talk this evening about what the components of that draft plan are going to be and what you've seen and what you haven't seen and what you should be looking for so that we can get your feedback before we make that plan available to everyone. So far you have seen already, and several of you commented back to me on a complete draft plan. which I will just take one more look at with you after I go over a couple of other things this evening, because I have made some changes incorporating some of the comments that were received so far. And I just had a couple more questions that I wanted to run by with you before before I make that final for distribution. Also, I have sent so far, I'm not sure that the committee has seen, but it's out there in circulation, a public engagement summary, the draft funding application, which we actually talked about the last time. And so the public engagement summary and a survey, an Excel spreadsheet that has survey results, and a template for making updates annually to this plan. So I'll talk about each of those things momentarily, but going through them first, the application, as I mentioned, we talked about this the last time. There haven't been any changes to the application since we discussed it. The only pin to put in that is that comparative evaluation criteria in the application will be adjusted to reflect the final goals and priorities after the public hearing. So the application will be included in the appendix of the draft plan, but those will be draft evaluation criteria, and I'll make sure that that's noted in the application materials. The public engagement summary will likewise be included in the appendix of the draft plan. I'm going to share screen right now and just quickly walk you through what the public engagement summary looks like. All right. So the public engagement summary has 3 sections to it. We all kind of went through this together, all of us in this meeting. So you were there, you know how the public engagement process worked. We had the series of 3 public forums. And so the summary provides highlights of what we heard at each of the public forums. And some notes. When you see the full complete draft with the appendices, you can have a chance to review these highlights. Then we also conducted a series of interviews, and the document includes a list of the people who were interviewed and highlights of what we heard in the interviews. So we're not providing any transcript of the conversations that I had in the interviews, but all of the points that were made by the interviewees that were relevant and pertinent to pass on to the committee as part of this planning process have been picked up in the series of highlights. And finally, the public engagement summary has a synopsis of the survey. You had 131 responses over the 2 months that the survey was available. And just to give a quick overview of who responded to the survey, I'm going to increase the size actually of this. I don't know if you can see the size expand on the shared screen. A comparison of the survey respondents to the overall population. The dark bars are the respondents and the light bars are the town's overall population. Your survey respondents tended to be predominantly middle-aged compared with the overall population, fewer people in other age ranges. So the 45 to 64-year-old age range was disproportionately large among survey respondents compared to the rest of the population. Fewer seniors, fewer younger adults, and very few under 18 or young adults under age 24. And the survey respondents were also disproportionately higher income. Not surprisingly, this is something that we see in public processes across the board. In fact, there's been large-scale research done in the area of civic engagement in Massachusetts that finds similar results to what we see here, that higher income homeowners tend to disproportionately represent themselves in any opportunity that they have to participate in government. So that's what we see in this survey as well. And the purpose for showing this information in the survey is so that you take this into consideration in interpreting the results of the survey. You know that the survey is skewed toward one end of your population. So you know what this segment of the population, the 131 people who responded to the survey felt about the goals and priorities that were covered in the survey. But you also know that all of those other voices were missing. And in using this to consider what your goals and priorities should be, you want to think about and maybe go out and find other voices and hear what people have to say who did not participate in the survey. So I just want to put that caveat out there, and that so that it's understood as you interpret the public engagement that you receive in the process, that you know that it's not entirely representative. And likewise, we provided a map showing where the respondents live in the community. And a larger share of respondents are in the eastern section of the town. The borders that are shown in the map that was provided in the survey are your census tracts, because that was really the easiest way for us to be able to compare the existing population to the survey respondents, because we know based on the census what the existing population is, what proportion of the existing population lives in those neighborhoods. So where 36% of the population resides in this section A in the map, 55% of survey respondents reside in that area, so more in that area. Whereas in South Grafton, 25% of the actual population lives there, and only 14% of survey respondents are in the southern area. The western central side is about evenly represented, and North Grafton is a little bit underrepresented, but not as much as South Grafton is underrepresented. 18% of the actual population compared with 10% of the survey respondents. So that's all that I wanted to cover with respect to the survey responses right now, but I want to get back to 100%. I can just give you a very quick overview of what this section looks like, and you can read it when it's circulated with the complete draft with appendices. So just to give an overview, the questions are all listed with the choices in these matrices, and then an indication of the proportion of people who felt that it was not important or somewhat important compared with very important and extremely important. And just to help it like jump out at you when you look at these results, I've bolded and highlighted the results that showed the strongest level of support in each category. So you'll see that as you have a chance to read through the survey on your own. And I've also I've summarized, I have not listed all of the individual comments, but I've summarized comments and shown in some cases where multiple people said the same or very similar things under each of the questions that had open-ended comments. Now, there will be, for your records, as I mentioned, an Excel spreadsheet that has all of the actual survey responses, including all of the comments in full. And that's not going to be included as part of the plan. I think that's just more information than anybody can reasonably absorb, but it's there if you ever need to see it for reference. So I think that's all that I wanted to cover with the public engagement summary. Are there any comments or questions before I move on to the draft plan? I'm going to end the screen share.
My only comment at the moment is that if the raw data spreadsheet that you mentioned from the Excel spreadsheet is not being shared out publicly by default, though it is available publicly, I'm just going to ask probably through Joanne or whoever that I do receive a copy of that. I do have an interest in, being able to drill down a little bit if I see something that looks a little bit odd in the actual, document that you'll be sending out as well, Roberta. So
Yes.
I would appreciate that. That's all I wanted to say.
All right. Yes, your feedback, actually, if you see something that's not well reflected, would be very helpful too.
If I would just add, I think that we should all see that as a committee.
I was going to send
thought
it
you
to
said
everybody.
We all were going to get it.
Thank you.
Yes. Makes sense.
Okay. So then the next thing that I would like to do, and I've got 10 minutes left out of the half hour that's allotted to me. So I'm going to try to run through this very quickly. I'm going to share the screen for the draft plan. I thank you, those of you who gave me some edits and comments on the plan. I'm just looking for the correct document to share. Here we go. I'm just on the wrong page. And now I need to get to the beginning. Thank you to those of you who sent comments. Everything has been incorporated that was that I had no further questions about. And I have a few notes that comments that I'd like to respond to or check in with you before I make any changes based on these comments. So I wanted to make sure I can see what pages. Page 12. Right. So on the demographic comparison data, one of the questions was that on chart 2, we're speaking about housing demographics. Should we clarify that households included in these references to the types of households include people who live in your housing authority properties or who are live in subsidized housing of some variety or another? My response to this is that on the tables, it says that the source for all of the tables is ACS, which is American Community Survey. And actually that's not spelled out. So now that I think of it, the first time I mention ACS, I'm going to make a note of that. I should describe what ACS is. So American Community Survey is the US Census summary sample data that they collect each year. And so if the source is ACS and they're taking a sample of all households in the community, does it require an explanation to say that ACS is a sample of all the residents in the community and not only residents of market rate housing units? If you feel that that is important to make that note about this, including both market rate and subsidized residents, then I can try to squeeze that into a footnote at the bottom of the page. It will take some gymnastics to do that, but I can probably make it work. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts were, if that's an important comment to make.
Does anyone have any comments?
Well, I'm looking at page 12, and I know that I had made some comments on there. And of course, as I'm looking at them cold now, I'm not sure I remember what I meant when I wrote it. But there was something I thought there was a conflict with at the top of the page as it relates to the numbers from 2010 and 2018 under individuals living alone. It showed 24% 2018 and 23% in 2010. And I was curious if that conflicted with one of the bullet items above there.
Yes, and I addressed that with some clarifying language. Sorry that I did this a while ago, so I'm having to remember pull it out of my memory. So I changed the language on this bullet a little bit. Compared to the region, a higher share of Grafton households are families, and Grafton has fewer individuals living alone. However, the share of people living alone in Grafton is growing.
All right.
So I think I added that last statement to address your confusion.
Thank you.
Yep.
At least for me personally, I don't have a strong feeling on the question you were asking about, clarifying hood or not. I would say, since Chris McGoldrick is on the call and he is here kind of on behalf of the Affordable Housing Trust, I'm just curious if he has any, if I may ask him if he has any thoughts on, if he, having seen this for the first time himself, I'm sure, if he has any thoughts and if that is something that should be clarified in his mind. I'd be curious.
And before you talk, Chris, just one comment. Is 1% really indicative of growing? Is that what you're saying? It's 1% over 8 years?
It's slightly larger. I wanted to make sure that it's clear that the first comparison was to the region, and then the second comparison is, or I could say has grown is slightly grown. I mean, it's probably within the margin of error. So I could.
Yeah, I just don't know that it's worth highlighting.
Okay.
Paul, my comment was only because what was originally said in there was different from what was in the chart. That was all. I agree with you. That's certainly within a margin of error. So it
Yeah.
wasn't a big deal. But I just wanted to prove that I read it.
No, I feel all feedback is valuable feedback, because when I can see how other people read it, other people's thought process is different from my own, and ultimately it's yours, not mine. So it needs to make sense to you. So I'm going to opt to not try to spell out the ACS if you don't have, I mean, just the fact that I need to spell out ACS in the first place, I didn't do that, and that needs to be spelled out somewhere so that people know what that is. But I don't think that we need to specify, knowing that that's a survey of all households in the community. I don't think we need to add something about it being market rate versus affordable housing. So
This-
the next.
This is really background information for the plan, right? So it's
Yeah.
not the focus of the plan, it's background information.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm going to move on to the next comments that I have on page 23 now. The pagination has changed a little bit from the version that you had earlier. So under the organizational capacity, a question about the Affordable Housing Trust. So it says that the Affordable Housing Trust aims to foster the creation of affordable housing, preserve existing affordable housing, and nurture community understanding of housing needs and support for local initiatives. The Trust prepared an action plan in 2017 to guide housing actions through 2021. The Trust currently has funds of approximately 1.65 million raised through a combination of CPA and a development settlement. So the question is whether we should add rental assistance here as part of the description of what the Housing Trust does. And my question back to you is this something that the Trust is currently doing, or is it a goal or action that they're exploring? Does it belong in this description? Yes.
Okay, I was the one that made that comment, and it is something that they are doing now. So I think it should be included.
If I may, my understanding is that the charge of our town's Affordable Housing Trust does not include the inclusion of rental assistance, but we don't really have any organization in town that does. So right now they are pursuing, shepherding the rental assistance program in town for, relating to COVID. And, they are, that's why there is an ask for us for this fall to, help fund for that. But their charge is not for rental assistance. And it is something that we can, do on a CPA funds. But I'm not as, I would only want to add it if we get a confirmation, at least from the AHT chair, or that's something that they think should be in this as their description. And my current feeling is that it's not, based on my understanding of their charge.
Well, the
Yeah,
charge,
I
there
disagree
was
with you
such thing
completely.
as rental assistance. Paul?
I recall Ed having this discussion with us last month, and he confirmed that they don't have that as their charge, but that they're looking to provide that because of what Justin just said, that there really is no entity within town to do that. And, whether they're looking to do it long-term and have it added to their charge, I don't know. That is the thing that I think we need to question.
I don't think financially
plan, right?
it's sustainable, that there's not a revenue stream that could support it for a long term. So
John,
you could say on a
Chris
temporary basis.
Chris
Joanne?
McGoldrick has his hand up.
Chris.
So I just wanted to chime in a little bit and just to clarify. So I believe the discussion around rental assistance for the Affordable Housing Trust, obviously I'll defer to the chair and their kind of views on this. But my understanding is that although it's not in the specific explicit charge, rental assistance, under the broader goals of achieving sustainable affordable housing, certain programs to sustain current units similar to rental assistance might be able to be considered under that broader charge, if that makes sense.
So would they be looking to modify their charge?
No, so under the broader context of the charge as it is, I believe that's where they would, if the argument were to be made for a rental assistance program, if they were going to take that on beyond the kind of emergency context in the context of the COVID-19, it would fall under that broader interpretation of their current charge. So it's not explicitly written out in their charge, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't pursue certain goals such as that.
If I may, my overall thinking on my comments there is just the fact that they are within my mind their right to do it. They're the closest match of Grafton to to run a rental assistance program at this point in time, even with their current charge. But I'm hesitant to add it to our CPA plan as a description of what the Affordable Housing Trust does, if that's not something they're looking to do outside of the immediate COVID needs. Unless we get something from them saying that makes sense to add.
Yeah, I think we need clarification from them, as you said, Justin.
And just to clarify, I absolutely agree with that and would defer to them if they're comfortable with that language. So
I have just thrown out a suggestion of some very vague language that we could add to the description, which would be consistent with the fact that they are looking to meet this need right now, without saying that this is a specific thing that they will continue doing in the future. And that is to simply address community housing needs within the list of what the purpose of the Affordable Housing Trust is. If you, the intent is just to make something that fits the category of.
And I'll say from my seat, if we are putting the wording address community housing needs in there, I think that is, a reasonable thing to write in this, because that does fit with their overall charge as well, without saying rental assistance. So I'm fine with that myself.
Yeah, well, my concern is that the fact that we are actually about to fund rental assistance, so that rental assistance, I would feel, should be in our plan. So we can beat that by saying that rental assistance currently being handled by the Affordable Housing Trust. That leaves it open to if there is another group that takes it on. But I just want to see that we're addressing money that we're making available in the plan. That's my concern.
I see what Jim's saying, but I also see what the other side's saying in terms of that's not in their formal charge. But my concern is that there's no long-term stream of income to deal with rental assistance. And that this is kind of a one-time thing, because if they come back to this every year, we'll have no money in 2 years for anything.
We have some comments in the Q&A from Bruce Spinney. Can I
Okay.
read them now?
Yep.
Bruce is on the Affordable Housing Trust. This was looked at in our housing production plan and is a goal we have spoken about. We don't operate under a charge in the normal context of a committee's charge. We have the resources currently to handle small-term programs like the one before the CPC this evening.
Okay, that answers that.
This may be something, I mean, certainly the Affordable Housing Trust will receive this draft plan to look at and comment on, correct, Roberta?
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
so this could be highlighted at that time and addressed.
My other suggestion is that I can just check to make sure that rental assistance is either mentioned explicitly or at least reflected the spirit of that in under the needs and goals section rather than the current description section. So that's something that I can put a pin in and make sure that that's covered later. But this is just still a draft, so there will be a chance to come back and go more in depth. I don't want to take up too much of your time this evening trying to nail down, like, finally, with finality, some of these questions. So I'll do my best to make sure that the draft for the public is good enough, and then we will take further comments next month.
Okay,
The
Joanne,
yes.
was there another question or was that it?
That was it. Bruce just had
Okay,
those two comments.
Okay.
The other comment on this page is a question of whether we should mention the regional nonprofit, under regional nonprofit partners, if we should also mention the VA. And my response to that is that the veterans agent is listed above under town staff who help to coordinate access to housing resources. Does the VA actively provide housing assistance to Grafton residents, or can you reasonably anticipate that they might seek development opportunities in Grafton? If so, if we need to add more bullet points, I don't think I can do the gymnastics to fit it on one page here, and we'll end up adding another page, which I can try to make that look right and not just have one bullet fall over. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that caveat out there. If we need to add it, we will. But I wanted to see if you felt that, if you all agree that that's something that we need to add.
If I may, I had made that comment as well, and I'm not sure to what extent that the VA is involved in it, but I know that there are VA programs. So I was just, that was really just as an aside, asking if this is something that we need to examine to see if it's significant enough to be included with the other resources there. That was all.
Okay. My sense is that your veterans agent is your resource for connecting people with veterans housing resources. All right. Page. So comment, we should add disabled housing as well under the definitions of project eligibility. And I am going to push back that we should not here, because these definitions are quoted directly from the state's enabling legislation, Chapter 44B. And so I don't want to diverge from the legislative definitions on this page. The disabled housing can certainly fall under your goals of what you would like to accomplish in supporting community housing. So we'll
can you
see
tell
that-
me where you are on that, please? On
I'm
what
sorry,
page?
this is page 25 on my version, and it falls under project eligibility, the second page of section 3.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I think that was my comment as well. Because the housing that we have out there is elderly housing and handicapped housing.
Yeah.
That was the only reason that I had asked that we should mention the disabled as well when we talk about community housing.
I appreciate all of your thoughtful comments on this.
Oh, don't lie, your nose gets bigger.
You made many more comments than I have raised here to share with all of you. So, you know, most of what you had to say was helpful for me to clarify the language, but I just wanted to come back and raise some of these with all of you before I moved on. So the
If I
last,
may, Roberta, I'm sorry.
yes, go ahead.
In the 44B section 2, the definition section, of course, it does mention the Americans with Disabilities Act in relation to rehabilitation of buildings.
Mhm.
Is that, would something about like that in particular fit in here with the definitions, like in relation to Jim's comment?
Perhaps not under definitions, but I could have another paragraph, see where I have a paragraph that says 44B prohibits supplanting. If you'd like, I can add a paragraph saying 44B also requires compliance with the Disability Act.
Yeah, the particular definition under 44B that I noticed it is, rehabilitation. So it does mention community housing in there as well, but I was rereading it for the first time in a while right now, so I didn't get the focus in on that. I just don't know if it would fit, but there's just something to look into, I think.
Okay. I will look into it, and I totally agree because it gets ignored far too much, and I really like using CPA as a lever to encourage communities to pay closer attention to the requirements for handicap accessibility. So I will take a look at that and see what language I could add to that section to remind people that that's your intent, to see that they comply. So the last thing that I wanted to mention, it's on my page 27, and it's the needs and opportunities and priorities under open space and recreation. 2 comments. The first comment, this is complicated. I'm going to actually make this be the second one I talk about. So the first comment that I'm going to mention is a question. There are mentions of plans for North Grafton and South Grafton. It seems that there's no plan for Center Grafton. So the plans that this is referring to are the plans that are mentioned previously. There's a text box early on in this plan that lists all of the town's plans that we referenced in developing this plan. And so this is referring to numerous recommendations from several of the plans that were listed on, it was page 3, just to this. So several of the plans listed, and there hasn't been a specific plan that I've identified. Maybe I've overlooked something that pertains to the center section of Grafton. There have been specific area plans for North Grafton and several area plans for South Grafton. And those are the ones that are being referred to in that statement about trails systems, the recommendation for development of trail systems along the Quinsigamond and Blackstone rivers, and the Blackstone River Greenway and other potential trails. So that's where that came from.
All right, if I can, I'm sorry,
Yes.
That was my comment as well. And you just answered my question, because that was just a question. Is there a plan like that as there is for North and South Grafton? And you answered when you said, no, there isn't. So I'm good.
Good.
Would it be more or less confusing if we did something like potential trails you know, identified in plans for parts of Grafton. Would that be more or less confusing? Do we think?
I feel as though it's good to, we want to give people breadcrumbs to lead them to where we found these recommendations. And I think parts of Grafton isn't enough breadcrumbs to send them to the
Okay.
plans that they're looking for.
I'm comfortable with that. Just
Okay.
throwing that out.
So the other question that was raised, and this might be something that's more appropriate to talk about next week or next month when we get into more depth about discussing the goals and priorities. Your comment was there's a mention of working agriculture, working farms. Should we be contributing CPA funds to help, these essentially businesses of farmers? And the intent that I had in this bullet, historic and heritage landscapes, was in referring to these plans that I've seen that list preservation of agriculture as being part of preserving the town's character. And so agriculture is farms. So this is, first of all, it's listed under it's defining what historic and heritage landscapes are, under defining what Grafton's needs are, areas in need of protection. And then under the priorities, it is, there's a statement that natural resources contribute to the economic vitality for Grafton's residents and businesses, including, working farms and forests are part of that. So, this is language that we can discuss taking in or leaving out. What we did here, you'll see in the public engagement summary, is that that's a low priority for among the people who responded. Preserving heritage landscapes and agriculture was probably the lowest priority of all of the natural resources that are identified in this area. So it does land in the second priorities category in our rubric here. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think that that's something to think about and come back to next week, or next month, I mean, whether you want to continue to highlight farms and agriculture as part of your resources that you have an interest in preserving, or whether that's not relevant to CPA.
If I could, I'm sorry to jump in again, but that was my comment as well. That just jumped out at me that, and it's, I would agree, sure, agriculture, historic and everything like that. But when you talk about a working farm or something like that, that just jumped out at me, and it seemed counterintuitive as to what we do.
Yeah,
that was all.
Well, I think this is a philosophical question, and I wanted to put it out to everyone. Again, I don't expect us to have an answer to that question this evening, but we do need to have an answer before we finish this project. So next month would be, I think, the time to come back and everyone weigh in on whether you want to change the language a little bit or change, substantively what's reflected in this statement. And I think that concludes all of the comments that I brought. Oh, one more. No, it doesn't. One more very important thing that I've added a section to the draft since you saw it. We now have a section 4, committee procedures and policies. And essentially what I've tried to do is to document what you are already doing. I've tried to stay close to my understanding of how things work now. And with tweaking it, because over the past couple of months this summer, we have made some refinements to your timeline in your application process. So this reflects the new application process, and otherwise the way things work now in the committee. So I would ask you to give a look at this, and especially this section, if nothing else, before we submit a draft for circulation, to fact check for me, ensure that I'm capturing the way it's done and the way it should read. For this section. It includes a task calendar, which I copied from a document that the committee already has on file of when things are done throughout the year. And the only changes to this task calendar are based on the application process that we've discussed. So that concludes what I wanted to talk about with you this evening. I'm going to stop the screen share again. So after tonight, I'm going to maybe spend a little bit of time tweaking a couple of things based on the feedback you've given me this evening, send a clean version of the draft plan with all of the appendices attached tomorrow before the weekend, and hopefully you'll have a chance within a week to return any comments that you have, so that by the end of next week, we should be ready to circulate that to the public and to the stakeholders. So that would be, I'd be looking for your comments by end of day next Thursday, so that I can incorporate those and have them back to Joanne on Friday next week. So that concludes what I have for you this evening. Any last words before I sign off?
Thank you for all your hard work.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's rewarding to see us get this far, so I look forward to.
Yeah. Thank you for all your work. It's a yeoman's job.
Thank you for the close read that you gave, and for really thinking, very carefully about all of the things that are raised in the plan.
Well, John thinks that I just phone it in, so.
I don't think anybody thinks that. All right. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
Be
Thank
well.
you.
God
Roberta.
bless you.
Bye.
Okay, and we're going to go to Ken next. He has the treasurer's report and wants to update us on some of the figures that from last month that we weren't sure on. He's been able to nail them down a little bit better.
Okay, in the past couple of weeks, I've met several times with the replacement town accountant concerning the closing of fiscal 2020 and the opening balances for this fiscal 2021. And I've found a number of discrepancies that traced back to errors in the town meeting process, the town meeting warrant process. So let's just start on fiscal 2020 that's showed here. You can see at the top, this is there's basically a section that considers the revenue and the budgeted reserve from revenue. Then there's carried over funds and reserve funds. So in this first section, we have our surcharge revenue, the state match, and the interest, which came out to be that. And these are the estimated numbers that we used. Then we made an administrative reserve, $24,000. We had the three 10% reserves here, which were done by Articles 7, 8, and 9 at the October 19th meeting. But there's a problem here I discovered, is that Article 18 of the May annual town meeting was specified that the $80,000 Pell Farm bond payment be made from revenue. And we discovered that between the correct signed and certified town meeting warrant and the materials presented at town meeting on the display, and those.
Is someone else on like Zoom or something? Because I'm having a really poor connection right now.
Okay, so maybe I don't know what else to do. I'll talk slower. at town meeting in May of last year, there was a change, an error introduced into the text of Article 18 between the time it was signed and certified by the select board and the creation of the materials for town meeting from that warrant. The materials for town meeting showed, are the information displayed on the screen and the information read by the select board members. In both of those, the information in both of those forms, the account that we specified for the payment to be made from was changed from fiscal 2020 revenue they changed it to the open space reserve. Now, the open space reserve we didn't choose the open space reserve at that time because it didn't have enough funds in it to meet the payment, but it was changed nevertheless. It was displayed and read incorrectly and approved incorrectly. And so instead of the funds being taken from here, they were taken from the open space reserve, which did not have enough money in it. And it actually went negative. We discovered. I discovered about a couple of weeks ago. So right now we're communicating with the Department of Revenue to see if, given that both these accounts are internal CPA accounts, that we can merely change this back to the way it should be with an accounting change. And we await their reading. If they don't agree with that, then we'll have to have a corrective warrant in the next town meeting. So that was one error. And so I adjusted these numbers showing that we ended the budgeted reserve at $246,000. Now, then I discovered another error in the reserve fund area. You may recall that there was a request from the Grafton Land Trust for baseline reports for properties for which the land trust has accepted a conservation restriction from the town. There are 4 properties. 2 of the properties were acquired with or partly with CPA funds, and 2 were acquired with municipal funds. So the CPA can only pay for the baseline reports for 2 of those. And Article 10 was written for the CPA funded properties, and it went through properly. Now, Article 11, not shown here, said that the money would come from town municipal funds. But again, the warrant was correct, but the materials presented at town meeting were incorrect. And they were incorrect in the form that the displayed article was correct, but the spoken article was incorrect. And the spoken article said that the funds for those second 2 properties were unlawfully to be to be funded from CPA funds. And so the accountant just saw what the minutes said. And so the accountant took the funds out of the open space reserve. So on the upside, those funds have not yet been expended, so that the account hasn't been, it has not paid out these funds improperly. And this particular mistake is recommended by the attorneys that we have to go to town meeting to get it corrected. So there's first there was an $80,000 mistake debiting the open space reserve, and this is an additional $4,000 mistake debiting the open space reserve in 2020, leaving it with a negative $29,000. So I just wanted to mention that these are things that need to be corrected in 2021. So moving to 2021. I don't want people to be left with this feeling that there's an $80,000 error in total funds within CPA. No, the total funds are correct. In fact, the total fund, the $80,000 was merely taken from the wrong CPA account. The only funds that were potentially to be removed from the CPA funds incorrectly were the second $4,000 for the baseline reports. That money is just, it's listed as a CPA grant not yet paid out. And that's going to be corrected before it gets paid out. So no money was lost from the CPA. It's just, it got a little disorganized due to errors in the town meeting warrant process. So moving to 2021, this top shows the surcharge revenue, an estimate for the state match, and an estimate for the interest to be earned. And that's $607,000 of income. The next section is the Article 24 from the June meeting, which shows the administration reserve of $24,000, which is our typical amount. We've been doing that for 3 years now. And then the 10% reserves for open space and recreation, historical, and affordable housing. And then it takes then the sum of these numbers and transfers it to an account called the fiscal 2021 budgeted reserve. And so far, so good. So as of yet, the committee and the town meeting have not approved any grants out of this money. So down here, the remaining budgeted reserve remains $401,000. Now, the only caveat here is that the state match is that we expect is really truly unknown. And so what the accountant and the committee decided to do was just to use the number, the same percentage that we got last year. And that's the default. There's been some talk that it might be as low as 11% instead of the 24%. And if that's the case, then this $401,000 will actually be reduced to $341,000. So there's some downside risk there based on the unknown factor of the state match. And the reason it's really unknown is because of the COVID problem and the the disruption of the economy that funds the accounts that the CPA distributions are made from. So that's just a potential out there that this might be $60,000 short, as much as $60,000 short. No one knows. So then we go to the undesignated fund balance. What this does is it rolls up all the unspent money that's from the prior year into this account. So the unspent fiscal 2020 budgeted reserve rolls into here. Any closed out grants, of which there was one for $400, gets rolled into here. And so that number on the town books is $451,000. The problem that we have is that the Pell Farm bond payment was improperly taken from that account. So once it's corrected, that account is actually going to go down to $371,600. So the only thing we've gotten taken out of that so far is the Lions Club. This line here just shows a correction that's going to remove that 79.9 from it. So that leaves $231,000. So that represents the bulk of the money that the committee has to grant, from which the committee has to grant. Just to review the reserve funds, when you considering these numbers here show the last year's carryover funds with the 10% grants added to them. You can see that two of them are above $60,000. The open space reserve is below it because it started out negative because of the two errors in it, the $4,000 and the $79,900 error. So far, we've granted, and in the Springtown meeting, the committee paid the two bond from the two bond payments from the corresponding reserve accounts, including the open space reserve, because at that time the committee did not know. In fact, the town didn't even know back in before the year-end close that the open space reserve account was underwater. We thought that since if they did it the way they were specified to do it in the warrant, then it would have plenty of money to cover the open space, or rather the Pelfon bond payment. But in fact, it didn't. And not only that, they incorrectly charged an extra $4,000 to the open space reserve. And that altogether leaves the open space reserve, underwater again. But we're expecting that we'll correct the open space reserve, leaving it with $40,000. So this shows the town meeting mistakes and the corrections to them. So the bottom line is that the amount of money we have to work with is about essentially this $371,000 plus 400,000, plus this number here. Oh, rather, excuse me. The amount of money we have to work with is about $600,000. And so when we consider the grants that are in front of us, we need to keep that in mind. Now, this amount of money is actually much less than we have had in the past, 5 years or so. So we're getting down close to because of the large number of grants last year, we have relatively less money than we're used to having. So we just need to keep that. We need to be aware of that. So that's the report.
What did the town accountant say, or anybody else that you talked to? Should we not err on the side of all the conservative numbers? And do we need to accept these numbers wrong until we correct them in October?
Well, this report shows the errors that are made, and if you can follow if you can follow the conventions of the screen here, that of course green shaded ones are the estimates, blue ones are things are proposals for the near future, and then this rose colored is for the distant future, and then there's no yellow on this sheet, but so what that means is these blue lines here is this if we're going to make a grant out of this fund, we'll put it here. If we're going to make a grant out of the carried over funds, we'll put it here. And this correction is shown as a proposed correction. And this correction here is shown as a proposed correction, as is this one. So there's not an issue of approving this, with or without the corrections, because the corrections are noted as proposals.
What about the state match that was unclear at this point?
Well, the state match is is often unclear, and the committee often works from guidance that's given by the coalition, but there isn't much guidance given by the coalition right now. They pretty much say they don't know.
So that even if we get a rather than the 23% that you think, and we get the 11%, we're still going to have almost the same amount. We'll just be $60,000 short. Is that right?
Well, almost is your operative word there. But the grants in front of us right now are going to take us down into the to less than $60,000 worth of leeway.
Okay.
The two grants in front of us now take us seriously into the bottom of the barrel. So you're right. We probably should keep a reserve of, given the uncertainties that we have, $100,000 to $200,000 ungranted this year.
If we're looking at not being, having the confidence even 11.2% match, shouldn't we plan for even less? At that point, like if I would, find it, hard to justify saying, well, we don't know what the match is going to be, so we're going to throw this number up, but because we don't know what it's going to be, we want to keep, an extra 100, 200,000 kind of, in reserve. That just feels wrong to me.
I don't know. I disagree, Justin. That feels right to me. We should keep at least $100,000 in reserve because we don't know if the match is going to be as high as that. And so I would, the uncertainty would lead us to keep a larger amount in reserve.
I sort of, see your point, but my thinking is why estimate with a number that we have essentially zero confidence would even be anywhere close to, that. Like with the state, they could be using the money for, COVID type reliefs, directly rather than, paying into a match for.
That's not true,
match.
Justin. That's not true. That's not the issue because the sources of funding for the CPA are defined.
Yes.
And they're not subject to being used for a different reason. The only thing is that they're subject to, being larger or smaller than estimated. They're not subject to being reappropriated. So I think that the 11% is probably a rock bottom amount, and who knows if the 23% number is good or not. We just defaulted it to what it was last year. But we need just to be aware that it might be $60,000 less than the numbers we're carrying in the main column. And so it's telling us that we should keep $100,000. We should keep at least $100,000 unspent or ungranted.
Yeah.
Before, when we're done with all the grants, we should make sure the number is at least $100,000 more than we granted.
Which is basically the full
Or
state
at least,
match.
I'm saying at least.
Yeah,
Which is assuming no state match, that's $111,000. So
That's right.
if we put that as our threshold, then we'd have $111,000 more to grant next May, but we're not going to end up with, right now we just have a spreadsheet error. We can't afford to have an accounting error where we are truly deficit spending.
Yeah, that's basically what I was talking about. Is are we looking at just
the spreadsheet is correct? It's the question is if the inputs are correct. And I agree. You're making a lot of sense, John, when you say, well, maybe the state match will be zero. It's unlikely, but it certainly isn't going to be worse than zero. And so keeping $111,000 of our powder dry after after October is a good idea. That's, in fact, we might choose more than that.
If I may, that's basically what I was just saying. Is like, I was suggesting if we don't know what the state match is going to be, and we don't have any confidence in it, 0% was what we might want to do.
Well, we have some confidence in it.
You did say 11.2% match is what you think is, if you were thinking 11.2% is our rock bottom, then maybe we plan it that way and then and we appropriate based on 11.2%, match for, and if we, and we can vote based on that. But if we're thinking we don't trust an 11.2% match as our rock bottom and we want to go with the 0% match as our rock bottom, then let's do that.
Yeah, Justin, I think I agree with you, Justin. The 11.2%, to my understanding, was the amount of money already in the account, the estate account that gets distributed, would provide 11.2%. But you're right. But even so, we should be conservative, and we should at least, I think we should keep at least $110,000 of our funds ungranted, and that would be the lowest number we've been at, for a decade, for sure.
So that would make our available funds 576 if we kept back 100.
Well, or maybe a little less.
566 if it's 111. 575. Does anybody else have anything to add? Any questions, comments about what Ken has said?
No, I think there's wisdom there, and I think we just go with it. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the treasurer's report.
Second.
Any discussion?
My
All
only
those in-
discussion,
Whoop.
Adam, John, I'm sorry, is that I would love if sometime within the next, week about, if we can get a copy of both the FY 2020 that Ken presented tonight and the FY 2021, as we discussed, tonight, to send out to all of us, just because I followed it well tonight, but trying to remember it, tomorrow will be harder if I don't have the physical paper in front of me, just because
Sure.
I can process it better that way.
Ken, can you just send that to
Joanne
Joanne?
has
I'm sure
a
you've already
copy of
done it.
this.
Yep.
Joanne has
Okay.
a copy of this for the meeting records, and she can send it out.
Great. Thank you.
And I'm a little confused on what Justin wants, though. Do you want something other than just this report that's in front of you now?
Last
Yes.
year.
Yes, he was telling, it sounds like he was interested in a copy of this spreadsheet.
And
I-
last year's.
I'm not as spreadsheet is fine as the spreadsheet or PDF of 20 and 21. Either
I
way
don't
is fine for me.
And so do you want August of 20?
He wants the
This
one.
month,
the one
what was
that's-
presented tonight.
this
You
one,
want this, that was presented
one I-
tonight?
The one I sent you this afternoon.
Yeah, okay, good. That's what I thought.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Okay, so any further discussion? All those in favor? And we'll start with Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy. Sandy. Are you-
Sorry, my unmute button was hidden. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Brooke. Aye. Paul,
Aye.
John, aye. Jen, Thomas,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
declare the motion carried unanimously. And Joanne will send out the spreadsheet that the treasurer's report for everyone.
Thank you, Ken, for all that work to try and
Mhm.
rectify all that. It sounds like it was a yeoman's
You
effort as well.
we have, we're asking the Department of Revenue if we can change the way we do grant articles, in the sense that we would no longer specify the account from which which CPA account the funds would come from in the article, and that we would simply say that they be expended from CPA funds. And then when after town meeting, we would send a letter to the town administrator and the town accountant listing the approved grants and specifying in that letter what account they come from.
That would be far better. And,
Because
general
these
public
are
has
not
no
the first
idea what these
mistakes.
funds are.
These are not the first two mistakes that have been made between the warrant and the town meeting.
Yeah, great job, Ken.
They do all sorts of things. They transpose digits in the numbers. This is not the first mistake. This is not the first two mistakes.
Thank you
Okay,
for
so
being
anyway,
vigilant.
I'll let you know. We've asked the DOR and we'll let you know how they respond.
Just to kind of rehash what Ken has said, that there are two errors that need to be corrected. One, we're hoping can just be a journal entry, which is the Pell Farm bond payment. And that's something that they can do internally these are just our records in the accounting office. And the second, though, is for the conservation restriction for the baseline reports. We think, we're not for sure, we're going to hear back from Ginny on this, the town council, that we may need to do one of two things: rescind the previous inaccurate article, or have an article that closes out the account. So one of the two things. So when it comes to writing a warrant article, we need to, if nothing else, create a placeholder with that in mind, so that if the town accountant decides, or the town council decides we do need a warrant article, we have the placeholder, we have the tentative language. We can work with the assistant town administrator, and if it turns out ultimately by town meeting that we don't need it, it can just be passed over. But if we don't do it, it's going to put us back another 6 months of trying to straighten it out.
Right, and it turns out that both of the baseline reports covered by the the article in error have been completed, and I've been told that the land trust has paid the vendor and is going to have to wait to be reimbursed by the town until this gets straightened out in October.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
John, I
Yes.
don't know if you need this, but you might want to entertain a motion for the placeholder and for the committee to give you the okay to work with the town administrator's office to draft any warrant articles that are needed to rectify these accounting issues.
So
Okay,
moved.
I didn't know if we wanted to do all the warrant articles at the end, or if we should just do them now so we don't skip or miss something.
Well,
I think
I felt like I was concerned with what you had said and that you were kind of forgetting about the potential need
Yeah.
for motion. So I
second
jumped in, sorry.
Okay, so I have a motion by Jim and seconded by Ken that, and I'll finish your warrant, that that the chairman, in consultation with the treasurer, and town administrator, assistant town administrator, will develop a warrant article that will serve as a placeholder, and if not needed, would be passed over at town meeting to correct this issue.
Okay, just for, as an aside, if it comes down to warrant articles at the next town meeting, there will need to be two of them. One to rescind the error in the CPC accounts, and one to properly appropriate the money from the town accounts.
Okay, so then there are going to be two articles. Jim, do you want to amend your motion?
The second
So moved.
article to pay from the town will be handled by the town
Right.
administrator's office and the select board, because
Yes,
we
the second
don't
is not-
we don't put that forward to spend their money. They will.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, one of the errors that was in the Article 11 was that article was submitted by the CPC, which it was not.
So is this going to be one or two warrant articles?
It'll be one for the CPC and one for the town.
Is that,
One for our committee.
So,
are we on the
so
same
Jim
page?
doesn't need to amend then.
Okay, wait. I need to.
Could I make a recommendation and the motion just say necessary warrant articles to rectify the accounting issue? And then I think you're covered.
Okay, that way it's one or two, whichever we need, because we're just trying to build in placeholders. And because we don't have an answer, just like we don't have a match, we don't have a legal answer from either the state or the town accountant, town council on what we should do. So do you want to try again, Jim?
So moved. I can
Um,
say that
Ken?
all night.
Ken?
I second it.
So we have a motion and a second. We're gonna, for warrant articles to be drafted by the chairman, the treasurer, and the assistant town administrator to correct the errors in the previous warrant articles. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Yes.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
John, Jen,
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
I declare the motion to carried unanimously. Okay. So we are going to skip back to the applicants. We apologize for those applicants that have waited very patiently for us. And the first is Jen Anderson with the Recreation Commission.
Hello.
Hi. The floor is yours.
Oh boy. All right. So I know we met last month and gave you the broad scope of what our plan was, which would be involving creating the accessible routes within the parks under the direction of the rec department, and providing playgrounds, accessible playground surfacing within the associated playgrounds. And so we have since been able to get that a little more detailed and update it for you. So I'm hoping you had a chance to look at the updated information. It's actually, bottom line, led to a request in less money, which I think is helpful. We're following, basically hired a consultant and obtained a consultant, and we're able to, the numbers I gave you before were kind of just a number for surfacing, a number for the material for the routes, and it knew we still needed to figure out how to make the connection in those routes from the parking lot to the pathway, and et cetera. So we were paired up with someone who knows very well how this is all supposed to work. That's Childscapes out of Marshfield. And so they put together quotes for us to deal with all the actual nitty gritty and what it would mean to get that surface into place and meet the grades and the running slopes and as well. So I've been able to summarize that for you, get a better detailed number for you. We're basically looking at the grass mats, which you should see a picture of in your packet, and asphalt to cover the variety of pathways that we would need amongst the parks. And then the grass mats and wood fiber would be used in the playground for the surfacing. I'm just pulling up right now. We would then,
Jen,
besides the contractor who would be doing the work, we would be purchasing the grass mats separately, the beach mats separately, and that would cover the scope of the project. So the whole scope of the project is running about, I think I just lost my page too, 250, 255. We do have about $17,000 in kind services that DPW would be able to do. And that would include such things as mainly the material removal for any of the excavation for the pathways, for that, some line striping, some sidewalk work, curb cutting and such. So that will come off. Recreation, putting in, being just slightly conservative on the $45,000 mark. I originally said 50, but again, wanted to put a little bit buffer. We're still finalizing all of the other things that need to be addressed in the ADA transition plan, and have made quite a bit of progress, but still need some stuff left. So wanted to make sure we were covered for that. So I could potentially bring more. That's just the minimum that we would be able to bring to help fund this project. And again, there's 2 grant opportunities. The first one is due the first week of October. That is through the Mass Office of Disability, and that would be for up to $250,000. I don't know the details on, how many of those projects get met or what portion of those get funded, but that is our first opportunity. Based on how that turned out, we would still have an opportunity for the park grant that would be due next July, and that's for up to $100,000. And those for small town grants wise that we are in that category of, very little there's very little number of applicants, and very close to 100% almost all the time get funded. So that's a very promising route as well for that. Again, so this isn't meeting the requirements of the ADA transition plan, meeting the goals of the open space and recreation plan. Any funds additional funds we could bring to the table, we absolutely will. And grant money that we obtained would help release money back to you. So fingers crossed, if this goes through to you and then through town meeting, if we get those 2 grants, looking at $0 CPA funds, but we'll do our best. So if I can just, I'm happy to answer any questions on how this will all work. You should also have the pictures of the proposed routes. Some of those are a little bit less than what I actually proposed before. Where some are cutting down, and 1 or 2 can be eliminated. But hopefully that covers. Hopefully you have what you need, but happy to expound upon or answer questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question?
Well, so Jen, the pictures of the routes, so that's going to be the mats, the blue mats that you have in the other picture?
Most of the yellow routes, the yellow pathways are going to be asphalt. The only 2 areas that would be the grass mats, the black rubber matting, would be at Ferry Street on the left-hand side from that parking lot to the basketball court, and at Norcross on the top of that pathway back to the batting cage. Those blue access mats are for the beach.
Just the beach, okay.
Already have one there in place, and this is to connect the rest of the amenities. So we needed to get access to the showers, the concession stand, the bathrooms, the pavilion, and the water. So those are additional mats to make those connections.
Okay, so the yellow lines are asphalt, but is that giving me any access to anything? I mean, it gets me around the park. And you do have that one set of black at Ferry Street, but where can you see what actually someone with a disability can use other than being able to now like go up the side of a park or around the park?
No, that's the pathways there are specifically to access all the amenities that are within the park. So at Airport, you're going to be able to, all right, so what do we have first? Norcross. So when you walk into Norcross, there's a bench to the right by the basketball court. That's that first yellow path. That next yellow path would give you access to the basketball court. And then that third one is getting you all the way down to the first set actually of spectator benches and dugout and back to the batting cage. Ferry Street, you'd walk.
Well, before, just stay on that one for 1 second, so I understand. So let's say if I'm in a wheelchair, I can use the basketball court, but I can't really use the field, right? I can't go onto the field. Or if I'm going to go to the little playground there for the kids, they can't use those either. They can get to them now, but they can't use them.
Okay, well,
Right?
I think it's 2 different parts. So there's that main pathway at Norcross Park. So you'd go up there, you could go straight up to the baseball field. All of that is cemented and spectator seated, and
Right.
Bathrooms are wheelchair accessible and everything. So you can access the field that way. I didn't mark like a curb cut specifically from the parking lot to the playground, but there'll be asphalt from the parking lot to the playground and connecting it to those grass mats within the playground. So they'll be able to access the handicap swing, the platform of the
So that'll
structure.
be on top of those wooden
Flag.
chips.
Sorry?
It'll be where those wooden chips are now. You'll have what you're calling grass mats, I guess, right?
Those will be over the top of the mulch. Yes.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Jen,
Just when I'm, just before I get off of this, and I don't know if it's Jen, if it's you, but those bathrooms are a disaster. You're saying they have access to those bathrooms. There's not a human being who could go in those bathrooms, disabled or otherwise. They're a disaster.
In regards to what manner?
At Norcross Field, the door's been kicked open there. I think they might even be kicked off the walls. It's just, I don't know who's taking care of that, but.
Well, few weeks ago, or more than a month ago, probably at this point, Little League wasn't going to be using the bathrooms, but, and so we didn't turn the water on or anything, but people broke in there, busted the door and caused a mess. I mean, so we've dealt with that. We repaired the lock.
Oh, good. All right.
According to all of the other items on the ADA transition plan, we've moved toilet dispensers. We're changing the pound pressure on the door so it's easier to open. We're putting the insulation around the piping. We're moving handles on the toilets to be on the wide side. So I don't know if you've looked at the
Yeah,
ADA.
no, great. No, I had been up there.
That,
I don't check on it often. I had been there a month ago. I didn't really want to go back in. So
yeah,
if you fixed it, that's awesome. Great.
Jen, this is Paul. One quick question. Forgive me if it's on the report. I didn't see it, but the life expectancy of the mat, do you know what, or the two different kinds of mats, do you know what that is?
Well, I don't have the beach mats off the top of my head. The grass mats are 5+ years. Most would last much longer, based on exposure, use, weather. Look at some of our other parks that aren't used a ton, like Riverview versus a Norcross, for example. But again, looking at like a poured in place material, you're looking at the same lifespan with 3 to 4 times the cost. So this gets us the ability to meet our need more immediately and cheaply, and be able to handle the maintenance internally and not have to outsource it if it was a poured in place, and help us maintain the modularity, I guess, if you want to call it. So as equipment either ages out or we look to expand to bring in new, we're going to more easily be able to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Jen, that I'm actually very happy with tightening up the ask in this and getting a finer, a finer quote, on what this project would end up costing. Definitely appreciated, and I also appreciate the details on what grants might be available that could offset the cost here. So I think this is a very worthwhile thing to do, and I appreciate the efforts that you've put in and reducing the initial ask from what we talked about last month. So I just wanted to say thank you
the
to
people that we worked with have put in an immense amount of time between the consultant and the contractor, and so I really feel that we've done every due diligence you can on this, and really get down to a really good number for this project, and making sure it's including all the pieces to make it all connect, meet the ADA needs, follow what the plan is recommended, and get everything compliant and accessible.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, my question to the committee is do we want to hear the application from the Affordable Housing Trust and then vote on both? Or do we want to vote on this application now and then vote on Affordable Housing Trust after they present? Do people have comments about how we should handle it?
John, if I may, I think it might be better to vote after the presentation for the trust, keeping in mind what we just learned from Ken, just in case we have to see if there's anything that we have to adjust.
Okay.
Because I'm just doing the simple math here, and if we look at what's being requested, we don't have 100,000 left over.
Right. Okay. Does that sound good to everybody? We'll just wait till Jen you have to wait a little bit to hear.
Okay.
how we vote.
Yeah, I'll add, I mean, I, based on the conversation of how, I mean, how that conversations goes, I definitely have some points. I mean, I'll wait.
Mhm.
But I think obviously with what we're looking to accomplish here, and I'm not diminishing what affordable housing is trying to do either. But you know, looking at what each of our financial situations are in yours, it seems as though we can definitely make this work. You know, get ourselves covered and get them up and running as well.
You've done a great job making a 180 turn and doing a huge amount of work and not much time. So we appreciate all that you've done and what you're going to be able to do with this if we get it approved at town meeting.
Yeah,
So
here.
you can just wait just a bit. And I think Chris is here.
Yep, I am. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I will be brief. Since our last meeting, I did provide some additional narrative context and clarification to the application as it was submitted. So part of the context that I did provide was an MHP report. They've been looking at and collecting information from communities throughout Massachusetts, looking at what those communities are providing in terms of programs similar to what we're proposing here tonight. And in those numbers, comparatively, we came in with the program as we envisioned it on a bit of the conservative side, right under where other communities, and that's excluding Boston, are also providing a similar service. So I think we're a little bit how we envisioned the program, right on the money, as they say. In terms of clarification, I did just include in that application that the part of the question was how the funding priority would go as we're looking at a number of potential funding sources for this program. So I did clarify that the CARES Act funding, which when we initially submitted the application was not, it wasn't guaranteed at that point. We weren't sure that it was fully dispensed. That has been clarified that that is available to us for this. And so the CARES Act funding would be expended first. Then if granted, we would expend any CPC funds received. And then after that, use Affordable Housing Trust monies in order to bolster any additional expenses needed. Obviously, if because of the nature of CPC funds, if there was excess funds at the termination at the end of this program, that money would be either returned. I did want to note that Arlington, which is another community we met with, MCO Housing, which is also running a program in Arlington. They've already received 37 applications and expended $152,000 from their account. And that's just with one round. There is, I think, a potential as these programs gain traction and people become aware of them to do additional application rounds. And I think that will end up generating additional interest and additional utilization of these programs throughout the year.
Are there other communities that are more on Grafton's population of 18 to 20,000 that you've been able to compare? Because Arlington probably has 100,000 people that live there.
At least.
Newton's, 200,000. I don't know. But are there other smaller towns that are doing this?
So I haven't been able to go into the data in that much detail to compare specific communities. Arlington, we have access to that information through MCO because the consultant that we're using. The MHP data is much more consolidated and doesn't really specify amounts from other communities. So I haven't drilled down in the data in that much detail, unfortunately.
Okay.
But again, in terms of the average throughout Massachusetts, excluding Boston, the amounts, I think it was around 425,000 was the average amount of program funding. So we're looking at right under that amount. I think we're anticipating the program expenses fairly well in that regard. Obviously, it's really hard to tell. It's going to be a moving target until these programs are really utilized fully, until we can get a real picture of what the actual amounts are going to be.
Have you actually signed the contract and started the program yet?
Yeah, so the contract has been signed. The program is moving forward. It's been advertised in the Grafton Common. I believe today we posted it on the town website, Facebook, and we'll be distributing flyers as well through different avenues. So we are actively marketing the program. It is moving forward.
But you haven't actually had any applications come in yet?
We have had one application already come in.
So they have started to come in. Okay.
Yeah. And so from that, so again, so I think that's where we're looking at being conscious of the numbers as discussed tonight with the CPA account, and now with the CARES Act funding being confirmed. Although in the application, I do note, we would still ask for the full 300,000 and 25,000 for administrative costs in order to provide some flexibility and buffering in the program. However, being conscious of the numbers, I would also request, if possible, or respectfully suggest that if the committee found it more palatable, that a grant of 200,000 for the actual disbursements, and then the 25,000 for administrative costs, if it were granted in that way, it would still fully fund the program as envisioned, albeit without the flexibility in funding. It would provide the 100,000 that the committee has been discussing as a buffering to their own account.
Don't you still have about 700,000 of CPA funds that are totally flexible and you could start spending that today? Don't you still have that to access?
Yeah, so I do believe that's available. So again, the envisioned way in which the funds would be expended would be CARES first, CPC second, and then dipping into the Affordable Housing Trust. If we were granted tonight the $200,000 or $300,000, what that does would help us to, rather than be dispensed the money to, I know that the term backfill has been used, but in terms of replenishing the AHT account. But I guess there was some question because of the specific nature of which CPC funds need to be expended for specific purposes. By granting the money at this time, it answers that question now rather than trying to procedurally answer it later.
Do you have an idea of when? I saw on the flyer that applications are due by, I don't know if it's the 14th of September. How long does the program just run? July, August, and September? Is that the?
Correct. So I just want to get the correct dates because we did just update the flyer. We did extend the date. Sorry, let me just pull up the flyer. I want to make sure I get the correct date.
Chris, while you're pulling that up, I didn't quite understand the piece about procedurally and the CPA funds you currently have. We reached out to the coalition and they stated there's absolutely no reason why you can't use CPA funds currently sitting in the trust. I don't know if I understood what you were saying, but there's no approvals. You'd have to go through that. Those funds are transferred to the trust with the intent that they be spent within the CPA guidelines. So whether the committee gives it to the trust in October or transferred it 6 years ago doesn't matter. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, I guess I was just noting that, I guess, yeah, I didn't realize that that had been a discussion with, but
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I still think it still helps procedurally to have it specifically expended rather than waiting, but.
There is a comment from Bruce Spinney regarding the comparison to Arlington. He just said the median income is on par with Grafton, and Arlington has about twice the population of Grafton.
That Bruce Spinney is one smart guy, huh?
Looks like Ken has his hand up.
Right. I'm just looking for clarification on what months are being reimbursed. Is it, are you planning on reimbursing 3 particular months or the next 3 months?
So the specification in the program is simply 3 months. So whether it's 3 months of back rent or 3 months upcoming rent,
Okay.
it would be up to, it would work either way, but it's up to the applicant to specify.
And so this program, given this 3-month time frame, whether no matter when the 3 months starts, is still going to be wrapped up fairly quickly, is it not?
Sorry,
is it expected to be, would it be complete, 5 months from now? Would it be, all completely done?
Well, yeah. So there's the application rounds, and so this initial round, the lottery applications, I did pull up the flyer. They'll need to be received by September 14th, and that can do the 3. That creates the lottery list, and they go through that. Just chooses if there's more than more applicants than the program is able to provide for. It creates a random list so that people are served in a random way rather than kind of choosing. So what that does is it would be the 3 months. And if there's additional money, that's kind of where I was saying that if that initial round is able to serve all of the applicants and there's money left over, there could be a potential for another application round to
So
essentially do another lottery. Yeah.
If that happens, the agency that you have, will they, if that agency that you have, will they continue to do the next round? And it's still another $400 for each application? Is that how that will work?
Yeah, so the board would have to authorize it. So they would do one initial round and it would be dispensed. And then obviously we would look at, what the numbers were and then there would be a potential if the board felt the need to do another application within that, or another application round within that budget.
Also, if let's just say there were 60 qualified applicants, could the board, your board, could the Affordable Housing Trust board decide that they want to go with 60 and they're just going to at least temporarily dip into the trust fund a little farther, and then ask for, then they could ask for CPA grant reimbursement at the following town meeting?
So the current program is estimated to serve 50 households. That could go one way or the other depending upon the actual amounts requested. So that's where that kind of flexibility that we were that I was discussing, that's where that kind of comes into play. And I think with the 700,000 that the Affordable Housing Trust currently has, that would be where they would dip into, and then again request additional funding to meet that need in the following town meeting.
So that sounds reasonable.
Anybody else have a question?
Ken, can you do what sounds reasonable? I think what Chris just said sounded reasonable, but I don't think that's the proposal.
No, the proposal is, it sounds like the proposal, as I read it, it could be for funding this current, funding the current plan, which would have up to 50 households. And I think it's just conjecture that if there were 60 qualified households, the trust could decide to also serve the extra 10 using its current trust money. And then it has the option of coming back to the CPA at the next town meeting and seeing
Okay.
if they can get a grant to support that extra 10, which
Okay.
they would certainly likely get.
So
John,
if I
I'm sorry,
understand-
I need to jump in with something.
Yep.
So when I was setting up this meeting, I had sent the invite to Dan Crossan, thinking he was the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. And I need to apologize to Bruce Spinney because he is now the chair and he is asking me if I can upgrade him to a panelist. So, John, you okay if I do that?
That's fine. Tell him we apologize.
I thought Dan was just ghosting me.
I
was
thought he
like-
So if we were to say, if they're happy to go to 225,000 from 325,000, I think we can put both of these articles to bed right now.
I do just want to clarify. So the Affordable Housing Trust has not specifically discussed that 200,000, but I did have a meeting earlier with Mr. Spinney and Dan Crossan and preparation of tonight, and that was my recommendation, that if the board were to think that the 300,000 was not palatable to request that 200,000. So I want to represent that clearly, that that's not necessarily the entire housing trust perspective, but.
All right, I understand that, but the bottom line is, knowing what we know, is that if you needed to go into the other CPA money that you have, you're still going to be okay. And then you call it backfill or call it whatever you want. When you go to the next town meeting, that money goes back again. But at the same time, we're able to move both of these articles forward. So I'm trying to look at the big picture here, and nobody's being disadvantaged one bit. Because as it turns out, if the rec department goes ahead and gets funded, then this becomes a moot point completely. So if we could just kind of come together on this, nobody's disadvantaged, and we make them both go forward. That's what I'm thinking.
Let me have two questions. I can see Paul and then Justin.
Just a little bit of clarification, if we could, on the money from the CARES Act. Is that earmarked for something specifically like rental assistance? Is that the only thing it can be used for?
Yeah,
or is
so
it more broad?
Yeah, so the 100,000 in CARES Act funding is specifically earmarked for emergency rental assistance, and would not be able to use otherwise.
And just, one point of order, that money has to be used first. It has
Correct.
to be used. Yeah.
And will be.
It's not even a question.
Looks like Justin and then Ken.
Sure. My question is, I guess, a clarification for both John and Ken is, when we talk about the Treasurer's report, my takeaway from what I heard John say, and I thought I was agreeing with when I looked at it, was that if we imagined a 0% state match, which saves us $100,000, like Ken was actually talking about, we were looking at a $575,000 budget to approve for projects. And that's what my kind of takeaway was. I could be misunderstanding, but if we approved them both as, both the rec commissions and the Affordable Housing Trust projects as presented, that's 535. So we'd be within that, within that window from what I took away out of that conversation. If I was misunderstood, I'll accept that. I just wanted to be clear.
Ken.
I would like to say that keeping $100,000 or so in reserve in the event that one of our estimates is $100,000 wrong, and that would leave us with zero money in the accounts. I think that's more of an aggressive of a stance than I'd be comfortable with. I'd like to keep $200,000 unspent. Because we'll have demand for other grants in the near future, and we'd like to save something for that.
but especially smaller ones.
Right, so I don't want to run it into the ground in any case. We need, we will have other projects seeking the grants, and so we don't want to zero it out in any way, shape, or form. So I think the $225,000 for this project for this town meeting, and the $210,000 for the recreation requests, could both be met, and within the prudence of keeping enough money in reserve for other projects to come along, next town meeting.
Okay, any other comments?
I might have more, but I want to give Bruce a chance to speak.
Does Bruce have a question, or did he get included?
No, I don't have a
There he
question.
is.
Sure.
Jim had mentioned, Mr. Chair, Jim had
You can
mentioned.
call me John. I'd prefer that you call me John.
All right, John. Jim had mentioned the reduction. When we were originally discussing this at the trust meeting, we knew CARES money was coming in. It wasn't confirmed. And having since been confirmed, we know we're going to use that money first. The available funds that you would provide or could provide or town meeting would provide after this would be used to fill out the rest of the preset amount that we have set aside. Any other program we do outside of 300K that we've already opted for this program would have to go back and be relooked at again. So we'd start this process over again. And we're aware that if it comes in the middle of December, the CPA funds available to us in our reserve account would have to be used. So if you're moving it down to 2.25, I can't speak for the trust, but this is something that we have talked about.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, Bruce. Anybody else?
This
I
is
guess my-
Sandy. I was
Sandy.
just going to say, I agree with Ken about, and Paul, of keeping more than zero in the bank or more than just a reserve, because other things will come up. I think both of the projects are worthwhile to be funded, but not at the expense of other future projects, and us taking off the ability to be able to fund other projects. And I think a practical approach would be great.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, I would just say that this committee would likely be happy to provide additional funds at future town meetings for this affordable housing purpose or any other worthy affordable housing purpose.
Can you provide again the exact amount that is available for the committee to work with tonight?
Ooh.
I feel like there were two different numbers, and I just want to make certain.
The exact amount, exact is a tough word when one's working with so many estimates.
I understand that, but I felt like we were dealing with a number around 400,000 and close to 500, and then a number more like around 550. And it may just be me, but I want to make certain that when you're adding these numbers up, you're left with what you think you're left with.
If we were to add these numbers up, I would like them to add up around $435,000, and that will leave us with, if everything that we expect to come in comes in, it would leave us with $200,000. If the state match is short, it might leave us with $140,000. But
that's what I have after Ken's report. That's what I had, is that we were looking at 575,000 with the conservative estimate. So the 435 would give us like around 150 or so, and then there's still breathing room back and forth. And I think the bottom line, and I think this can't be stressed strongly enough, is that neither of these are going to be disadvantaged. Neither of these programs are going to be disadvantaged. They're both going to be able to be provided for, and I think that's the important thing.
No, but Jim, if I can ask something, Jim, it's not, I don't think they're saying these are going to be disadvantaged. It's anything that comes in the future would be disadvantaged. And I'm not against the project at all. I think it's a good thing. I guess I'm just thinking of that and Ken's hesitancy with the lack of funds, why we're expending another $200,000 to a fund that already has $700,000 in it that can be used, plus another $100,000 that they have to use first. I think, they only have one application. If they get a run on applications and $800,000 is used, then we can certainly use CPA funds to, as everyone keeps saying, backfill it, but we're actually forward filling it before we even know they have, they have an application, but you have to meet certain criteria, right? Chris is my guess.
With all due respect, Brooke, I do want to say that,
Well, there was a
this
question
point-
to Chris.
Yeah.
But
I-
go ahead, Justin. Do you want to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that at the last meeting we had, you went back and forth with Ed, bringing that exact point up a bunch of times. Ed explained a few times why, he felt on behalf of the AHT that, using their money wasn't, for this program and waiting till this program was completely, funded and done, wasn't as good of an idea, so that they can actually also try to move forward, in a faster manner with, the Worcester Street, project and things like that. So I would be hesitant to say we should not fund rental assistance because we've given them money in the past, and that they also
I'm not really sure that's what I said. What I'm saying is there's $800,000 to use. That affordable housing has $1.6 million in it. So 800,000 can be used for affordable housing now. We're decimating CPC to front fund monies they may use, which it sounds like that's what the board wants to do, sorry, not the board, the CPC, maybe they want to do. We are handcuffing ourselves to put more money into a fund that already has $800,000 for that same use. And I know they want to do other things, but that 1.6 has been in there for 5 or 6 years. We talked about this program a month ago, and now we have at least one applicant, which is, I guess, good or bad, depending on how you want to look at it. And Chris, you have to meet certain financial criteria. So just because you have an application, that doesn't mean that's going to be funded, is my guess. Right?
So I don't want to speak for the board, but just speaking to the funds already in the AHT. So obviously the emergency rental assistance is a program that was not anticipated by any stretch of the imagination. It's a new program. There was already there's already a lot of kind of projects that I think the trust is already anticipating. We're seeing a lot of new development, obviously with the 8 Pine Street. There's also additional projects that the board or the trust has been hearing and maybe moving forward with, and those resources may be required to be utilized. So I think keeping those available for other purposes in the context of this being a very unanticipated but very much needed program, I think that additional funding would assist the trust in continuing to operate and be an enticing organization for outside investment as well.
I think if there's other plans that the Affordable Housing Trust is working on right now, if you guys could go into that at least on a little bit, then people would be okay. Then we don't have a problem with this. We don't want to cut you short. But if there's really not anything, then it's like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's like, if you have all the money, we can't give you any more.
John,
But if we still have money, we can then expend it later.
So again, I don't want to speak for the trust, but they did hear an a potential proposal last night, speaking about potentials for additional units on town-owned property. If the trust moves forward with that could potentially be a larger expense that would be coming from their account. But again, it's very preliminary, so to go into too much detail, I can't speak for the trust in terms of specific projects.
But Chris, this program's going to be open for another 2 weeks. You can take application till September 14th.
For the first round, correct.
Okay,
That's currently where the application round is slated to end September 14th.
okay, and the other programs that affordable housing may have is what? An RFP on Worcester Street or something on Pine Street, or, I mean, where are those processed? Have they RFP'd any of those things? I mean, how close are they to expending money on those other projects? Because if they're close and you're going to take out of this fund, then I get it. I don't get, and again, I'm not against the project, and I'll vote to backfill in the true sense of the word in May. I just don't get why, unless there's a real reason to stockpile another 200 or 300 grand in a fund that has, again, 800,000 that can be spent on anything, and whatever the number is that they can spend on RFPs and the rest of or doing any work on those other projects. I don't know why we handcuff this group in order to, in my mind, overfund one. But if you can show how that money has been designated in the RFPing, and that there's some sort of money stream that's going to come out of that fund, so it's not going to be 1.6 million. So so to throw another 300,000 into a 1.6 million dollar fund, it's really only going to be 400,000. That I get, and fund it now. And I would get funding it now. I guess I just don't. I'd rather fund it later, because they seem to have a lot of money in that account, whether it's for other projects or for this particular project. And I guess it just hasn't been articulated why the need is right now. Not that there isn't a need, but why the need has to be funded today and not in May, when you have a better idea of how many people participated in the program and how much money you spent. Because hopefully it turns out to very few people. But if it doesn't, and it turns out to a lot, then I think everyone on this committee has agreed that we would fund it.
My concern is that we give you this money and you have a handful of people, that it was a great program, but people didn't need it. That money is tied up. We cannot do anything else with it. If there's a sunset on it for 6 months, a year, I'm not real sure how long the program, we need to make sure the money is available as long as the program's going to be there. But that money is locked up. It cannot be spent. If you want to do 8 Pine Street and you need that money, we can't give you that money. It's got to go back to town meeting. You've got to rescind it. Then you've got to reappropriate. So that's another problem that we have of if we allot the money, the allotment can only be used for rental assistance, nothing else.
Yeah, that's
I heard somebody. I don't.
Yeah, it's me. I'm sorry. I apologize. I raised my
You're
hand, but-
page two. You're page 2. Sorry.
No worries. So there's a methodology behind this. Originally, the money that's been accrued in the trust over the past years has typically come from the reserve, the Affordable Housing Trust moving in, not specifically for a project. Up until this point, the trust has not been purposed to do a rental assistance program, never mind an emergency rental assistance program. So our kind of our methodology behind this is something that is traditionally going to come from the CPC. In the future, I guess if you want us to run it and maintain it, we'll be coming back to you, in the spring for another round if it's required or something like that. This is not something that traditionally we have done. So we're asking for the CPC to provide us with the funds for this particular round. So all the money that's been saved over the past, 10 years or so has been for affordable housing. And we've always been under the assumption that that was what our purpose was. As we adjust this purpose to handle this program, we're coming to you and asking to, put funds in place that we can process. And in the long term, we can take another look at it. I would say that to Brooke's point about what projects we have in store, we haven't been transferred the deed for Worcester Street yet, but town meeting has granted us the authority to put that in our portfolio. There's also several affordable housing opportunities that are currently active. And if we're one of those developers to come to us and ask for some type of assistance, or if we were to approach other developers to provide them with some encouragement to build their projects, it's not technically us that's going to develop them, but we might do things like offset sewer hookup fees or provide them with some stage one engineering for particular sites. And we can expend money fairly quickly out of our 1.6, 1.7 million. And that's what those monies were actually for when we put them in there. If we want to have another discussion a little bit later about a long-term program that the Affordable Housing Trust takes under its wing, then I think we can have that conversation. But for right now, we want to make sure that the actual rental assistance program is secured with funds from you.
Let me just add, we did communicate with the coalition, and Stuart Saganor had responded back to us saying, you know, it's great that we're doing this program, that there's so many worthwhile programs that are waiting to happen, that $600,000 is a substantial amount of CP funding for a town the size of Grafton. And so it would be a huge win to see some of that put towards something like rental assistance. And I think what he explained to us at our workshop, and then as we've asked him additional questions, that we shouldn't be sitting on money, and we shouldn't be bankrolling like the Affordable Housing Trust, that defeats the purpose of the money being spent, that you need to be spending this money, that you're depriving some other group or some other opportunity of getting funding if the money is locked up. And as far as a project that you might have, if it sounds like it's a big project, we could bond for it. I mean, that's another nice thing about us, that we have the ability to do that. So that if you do,
that's where it kind of falls down with me, because the Affordable Housing Trust has a great deal of autonomy that you guys do not have for spending. So we have the availability to access those funds directly and immediately. Your funds are encumbered. So not only do you have this process by which you bring a project through, which can take months, but you also have to rely on a town meeting vote. The trust is designed solely to avoid those processes. So the money that we have in here is far less encumbered than the money that we're asking for you to use. So if we were to go and do a project, we can just go and do it. That's why we have that accrued funds in there. And if we were designed all along to handle rental assistance, we would be asking for more money than the 10% of the reserve accounts that we've been getting over the past years. So if we're designed for that, then we're going to ask for more on an annual basis to handle those particular programs. But we're just not designed to do that. This is a program that's relatively new. It was put before the trust for us to actually manage and to try to find a path forward, which we have. And then we came back to you guys to provide the funds for it. If we want to sit and look at it, in the spring and see a better path forward for handling this over a long term, then we can. But for right now, we're in a different environment.
Can I jump in with a question in the Q&A?
Yep.
Dan Kusher has asked, can you put a relatively short sunset on the 200,000, like 4 months, so that the money's available for May if Affordable Housing Trust doesn't need it all?
Sure. Whoever makes the motion gets to decide what they would like it to be.
Well, right, that could be put in the motion.
Programs too, John. I mean, so if we have a 3-month program that we're rolling out, if we don't use the funds in those 3 months, we can come back on our own accord in the spring and deplete the warrant. So we don't have to let it naturally sunset. If you put a 2-year term on it like you typically do, we come back in the spring, we haven't used it, we would just come back on our own fruition.
The only problem with that is it's not available to be allocated at May town meeting for another project. What Dan is saying, if it shuts down, say in February, then the committee would know they have those funds to then do something with.
Fair enough.
What month would be an appropriate sunset to meet the needs of the program as you understand it?
Ken's question is relevant right now. I'll let him go because mine is a slight tangent. So
yeah. You might need to repeat that, Ken.
My question is to Bruce as to what month would be a comfortable program end date for an early sunset?
Wait, I mean, nobody knows what the fall is going to provide. The governor pushed back the eviction relief until September, but also, people that are struggling no longer have the federal subsidized unemployment benefits. So you're probably going to see a lot more breakdown over the next couple months. But I would say in the spring, you'd be able to reevaluate it. I mean, we're not going to have a program. If we exhaust the full 300,000 now, we would have to come back and say, the need is there, but you guys wouldn't have the funds for it anyways. So at that point, we have to do something.
If the money is sunsetted, it would go back automatically.
Yeah,
It's
exhausting
accounting.
early would be, it's not, if you exhaust the total amount of funds early, that's not an issue. That's not the question. And that would be, that would be fine. The question would be is if it turns out that the demand turned out to be far less than projected, then it'd be a shame for the money to be locked up, for an extended period of time. And
And
so,
it'd be a second run, so put 6 months on it. 3 months for the first run, 3 months for the second run.
For us to be able to make sure this is available to you, we would need to have it sunset January 31st. So that way, or is it March? How about February 28th? Because March is when we have to turn over our warrants. So we would need to know our dollar amount at that meeting in February.
I
That's
mean,
5
you're talking
months.
6 months away now. You want to fit your timeline. If you get other grant applications in this spring, you'll know that money's coming back from this particular allotment.
But it'll have to wait for another town meeting
Sure.
to act.
I don't necessarily think that's would hurt us in the immediate. And if it encourages us to move forward, then it would make sense to me.
okay.
I think
I have
Justin, wait, go ahead, Ken, and then Justin, sorry.
one more question of eventuality. Is this program, as might this program, as you contemplate it, have a say an immediate start? And let's just say you get half of the available applicants right away, but then 3 months from now, all of a sudden the demand kicks up, and you would want to use the other half 3 or 4 months from now.
I wouldn't be able to speak to that, Ken. I mean, it depends on, we just launched the program. We got a couple more weeks of pre-qualification period. We're going to have to see how it runs. We might have to go out and advertise again. Like anything in a small town, our access to everybody in town is quite limited. I mean, the town website is great and Facebook is great, but you're not necessarily reaching all the places you need to reach. So we're exploring that now. So it would be hard for me to say that if it's like 2 months and we have to reassess the program and start over, that I could tell you what that was going to look like, whether it be more demand or less demand.
So other than an early sunset date, would there be anything to preclude, to stop you from, meeting whatever demand is available today immediately, and then you might find out that 3 months from now the demand kicks up again? And if you still had half of your slots left over, could you start them up 3 months from now?
I suppose we could.
Second round, you're talking, Ken.
Yeah, if this it turns out that this initial this initial funding supported a first round and then a second round before it got used up.
Yeah,
I think he's saying yes.
Yes, that's the methodology we're under. I mean, we have 3 people that apply for this, which I think is going to be low over the course of the entirety of the town. It may be that we need to reassess how we're actually approaching people and connecting with the people who are going to be in a higher demand for this particular type of program.
Let me ask you a question I'm sorry, Justin, it just hit me. Because the warrant article won't be approved until the third Monday in October, assuming that's when we have town meeting. You're going to be awarding grants before then. So you're going to have to spend your own money until then, right?
Yes.
Right. So this is basically going to have to backfill because you're not going to get
So-
this.
So that amount will come out of CARES. If the CARES Act money is expended, if we go through the 100,000 of CARES Act funding, then presumably the Affordable Housing Trust would have to come up with the remainder
In the interim. Okay.
in the interim, correct?
Sorry, Justin, you've been very patient.
No problem. My first thing is just a brief comment that I remember the discussion with Stuart very differently. I don't remember him saying like what you remembered him saying with regards to, affordable housing and, funding it. But I'll have to rewatch that meeting to validate my own memory there.
I'm reading from an email that he sent.
Okay.
So I'm literally reading from an email that he
In that
sent.
case, yeah, I did not see the email to have any insight into, what context there was for him to say that. But anyway,
it goes on to say, since there haven't been any units funded in over 7 years, it makes perfect sense for the trust to use the funding on hand for the rental assistance program, then apply to CPC for more funding once they have a particular use outlined.
yeah, like I very much hesitate to take excerpts from an email that I haven't seen or an email thread I haven't seen into my own judgment in a meeting, just because there could be a lot more of the back and forth there that I just don't know. And that's just for me personally. But my main, my further point is to describe that.
Justin, I'll be happy to, I will send the committee that email. It was sent to John and I. I'll make sure you all get it.
Okay, that's certainly fine. It won't help me in voting for tonight, but that's certainly fine, and I'll appreciate that. Thank you. But my further point that I had a thought about is that, to Brooke's point about not wanting to have us expend all our money, and why he may be a no vote for this fall town meeting on this project, would it make sense to bond one of these things for just a few years, like
No.
the Rex thing? I know it's they're low dollar amounts, but the idea is if we bond one, in theory we have more available for shorter term. I
I don't think that's something you can bond for.
There's no useful life for it. That's part of the bonding requirement is that's how you determine whether it's a 10 or 20-year bond. This money's
the useful life is in the rec commission's proposal, where there is a useful life there. That's what I was thinking about as far as bonding. But
if they wanted to build a unit or work with the developer, that's when that's the purpose of the bonding, is to help them get over a hump with a larger chunk of money, larger than they can accumulate when we only give them $60,000, $70,000 a year. I don't know if anybody else is ready. I'm ready for a motion. Is there any other discussion?
All right, I'd like to make a motion that we go forward on the recreation for $210,000.
Second.
Is that the correct amount, or is it 225?
No,
It was 210 with a sunset. 210 with a sunset.
210
And
with
the-
a sunset of 2 years.
No. All right, I'll wait till discussion.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second for $210,000 for recreation to do handicap accessibility at all the parks that they control. And the sunset would be June of 2023. No discussion? All those in favor? Starting with,
do you have discussion, Paul?
sorry.
I was confused. I thought we were talking about the other article at first. So no, I don't.
Nope, we're doing
Apologies.
the recreation first, sorry. So was that it? No further discussion? Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Yes.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
John, I, Jen,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Okay, I declare the motion carried unanimously for the recreation application. So the second application is from the Affordable Housing Trust. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we cover the Affordable Housing Trust for the amount of $225,000 with a sunset date of February 28th, 2021.
Second.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second for $225,000 to be used for rental assistance for the Affordable Housing Trust, with those funds sunsetting on February 28th, 2021. All those in favor, starting with,
Wait, I'm really sorry. Who seconded that?
I did.
Thank you.
sorry. All those in favor, starting with Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Yes.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
John, I, Jen,
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
I declare the motion carried unanimously for $225,000 for Affordable Housing Trust rental assistance program, sunsetting February 28th, 2021. Thank you, guys. Let me get back
Thank
to
you.
my. Do we want to pass over the clerk's report? It's 9:30. Do we want to do the clerk's report?
Go ahead.
Everything looks good, I saw.
John, thank you
I
very
didn't
much.
know-
I'm gonna log off.
Good night, Bruce.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Bruce.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thanks,
I
Bruce.
move that. Bleh. I move that we accept the minutes for July as presented, pending any potential corrections noted in discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Motion a second by Jim. The only correction I would have is I made a huge mistake by saying I think that the Cisco project was finished. So either delete that or say John mistakenly said. Because they're not.
I frankly don't remember you saying that you thought it was finished. I do
think I
recall
did.
something.
I think
I think
that
you
we're
said
accurate.
you believe it's
Watch the tape. I
progressing.
remember nothing. I remember that.
okay.
He said it because I remember thinking, I can't possibly be done, but he said it.
I was just trying to move along the discussion, okay? Although, any further discussion, all those in favor? Oh, sorry. Man. Kristen. Kristen.
Aye.
Sandy.
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't there.
Okay. Jim.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
Brooke.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
John. I. Jen.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Project updates. Move. The whole thing's not moving.
John, because you made the comment in the other minutes, I'm going to keep it in there. And under these minutes for Cisco Homestead update, I'll say John had mistakenly stated last month it was completed and it's not. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Do we want to quickly go over these? Some of these I know we have a little bit of an update. Open space and recreation. Do we know if that's put to bed? Not sure. Okay. Institute Woods, is that still straggling? Almost. Historic gravestones, nothing. Common restoration, Paul?
Really no change since my report last month. We're still waiting for the final plans. Hopefully they will be completed within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. I do have a little bit of a Lions Club engineering work, I talked to Peter Adams, and there was a little issue of paving, and they may have gotten too close to a property line, so they were maybe going to remove some of the paving. That it's a good neighbor, and they wanted to stay friendly, but also that necessitated an engineer to go out and survey the property line, which was we discussed that, and that was certainly part of the normal expense for that project. But Peter was going to do all this himself, so there's not going to be any expense on his part. He did some of that paving, so that's all I have for that. And then
I
Cisco,
could add to that, the driveway and the parking lot, ground was leveled and a base coat of asphalt was put in place. And the work was done through the town and supervised by Brian Suzerko.
okay. Oh, another piece that I forgot to mention is that Bryant's bid out or whatever, the amount of asphalt at a higher amount that they didn't have to use. So they did have Peter said, a significant cost savings. So that's a good thing for their project. And Cisco Homestead, did you got that right?
Yes,
Justin?
I did get the email from Ray. If you want to summarize it, that's fine. 'Cause I know you are also included on that, or I can.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sure. So since January, a bunch of the work Ray was hoping to have completed there got delayed due to COVID, but the architects are working on some preliminary plans for interior work there, and they were expecting to have the interior photos done earlier, but because of COVID and gathering size restrictions, they couldn't do that because to take the photos, it will involve a small group of people moving a bunch of the stuff inside into storage pods, basically. So they are anticipating being able to do those photos around the 19th, 20th of September, and hopefully have a update including those photos for us for our next meeting.
So I just want to, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, John.
I just wanted to say that Ray's father, who was the former chief of the Nipmuc Nation here in Grafton, just died this last weekend. So just wanted to let you guys know that he was very involved when he was the chief. And I remember working with him quite a bit on Grafton Celebrates 175. So just want to keep Ray and her family in our thoughts at this time.
Thank you.
And unless there's anything else, Mr. Jim,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
all those in favor, starting
Aye.
with Kristen,
All right, jump the gun.
Aye.
Kristen, Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken, Brooke,
Hi,
Paul,
Aye.
John,
fell asleep, Ken.
Jen,
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, guys. Sorry it took so long.